because they're live edge, we made a tripod design that fits into the nooks and crannies of these slabs.
You can start with any kind of welding machine that melts metal together and start doing jobs.
What's up, guys? Pretty good job today. We got 6 table bases to make. 4 of them are a bit smaller, 2 larger ones. Very simple design tripod. So we're gonna head to the metal supply store. I already made this order last week. Most of the stuff is pre-cut. That should save us some time today. And the last thing that's nice is it's just a bare metal finish. So we just need to supply the legs, welded, cleaned up a little bit so there's nothing sharp, and then the client's going to decide whether to clear coat or paint or what have you. So first step is let's get in the car and go get some metal.
I'm lucky in a sense that there's quite a few options here for metal suppliers, and it's actually how I got started in the metal industry. I worked for one of these suppliers, and that's where I'm going to now. So, you know, relationships help. This specific business is a small business, just like owner, a handful of workers. I was there very early on in their business, and they're pretty good to me now. You know, they'll turn around orders pretty quick and give me favorable pricing. I give them enough orders that they try and make it attractive to keep shopping with them. So I'm in the car today. For those of you that don't follow the channel, like, we're without a truck right now. We'll probably be getting one soon enough. We're just looking at financing options, whether we're going to buy used or go brand new. But, you know, operating for about 5 years, the majority of the time just with a car. When you're running a welding business, I mean, it depends on what type of welding, but you're either showing up on site to weld or you're welding in your shop, and everything else is logistics. So if it's large materials that you need or machinery rentals, then that can meet you on site, or you can get stuff delivered. Or what I'm doing right now is the order's pre-cut. There's still some longer lengths, like a 12-foot piece, and I'll put that on the roof, no problem. But, you know, there's a misconception that, like, I got to start a business, I got to buy a welding machine, truck, and like, until I can do that, can I really start? But, you know, you can start with any kind of welding machine that melts metal together and start doing jobs. And this is a perfect job. Furniture legs and nothing crazy. Basically anybody with a welder could have landed this job. Obviously this client reached out after knowing me, knowing the business and past work, etc. So let's I'll take you to the metal shop.
If you guys are wondering, this roof rack I made maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It's just some aluminum square tubes and a couple of spacers where the mounting points are on my car. The mounting points were pre-threaded, so it's just a 1/4-inch bolt right into the roof of the car. It's, you know, less than $30 to build this, and I've used it for hundreds of trips, whether it was beams, 20-foot lengths, even a fridge. Totally suitable and a lot easier than you might think to put together a usable roof rack.
All right, so that's loaded up. Pretty good example. Like, you know, there's a 12-foot piece on that, and a lot of people, you know, buy a truck and with the 6.5-foot beds, or even like the 4-foot beds, you know, a lot of those guys, you know, have to pick up an order, and you're still strapping this kind of stuff down. Just what I'm getting at is, you know, a truck definitely has its place, and I'm definitely interested in getting a truck. Like, we're working towards getting the truck back in our business operation. But you know, in terms of day-to-day operations, you can get by with a lot of things. You know, if you have a pretty standard truck and you're picking up 12-foot pieces or 20-foot pieces, you're still gonna have to strap it. I mean, I often joke, like, I'll go to Home Depot and pick up some plywood and throw it on the roof of my car and be out of the parking lot before the guy who's loading drywall beside me. You know, it's not like it's a major inconvenience. If you're running a business of any size and you're just starting out, you use every tool you have to the fullest. We basically condemned this specific car to work vehicle, so I'm really just beating it up and doing whatever I need to get by on this vehicle. And I mean, it's paid for itself however many times over. Like this, I've been driving this car for almost 8-9 years now. So, you know, the people that are updating their vehicles often, you gotta ask yourself if it's worth it. Now, if you're running a business that you're in the truck every day and it needs to be, you know, if you're a mobile welder and you're always on site, everything needs to be reliable. You need a nice looking, presentable vehicle. Totally get that. But for now and for me, this is where we're at, and I think we'll be upgrading soon enough. And yeah, so I got about a 10-minute drive back to my place, and then we'll jump right into the welding.
Alright, we're back home at the shop now, so I'm just unloading the flat bars. If you're wondering why the flat bars aren't pre-cut and the rods are, basically the rods are the legs, and I had a preset height from the customer, so I was able to order the right sizes, you know, ready to go. It's 1-inch solid rod, so it kind of would have sucked to have to cut all these anyways. And then the flat bar, it's 3/8 by 2.5, and the reason I didn't get it pre-cut is because of the job involves making this bases to conform to the live edge. When I had first quoted this job, I just quoted it based off a specific diameter, so I told him if, you know, the diameter of the triangle was 30 inches, then it would be this price, and if they were smaller, around 16 inches, then it'd be a little bit cheaper. Now, I didn't really account for having to make each base specific to the piece of wood, so just food for thought or something to think about when you're pricing some of these jobs. So the first step, all this stuff is pre-cut, but there's still kind of a sharp edge with a burr, so I'm just going around everything with flap disc. I start flatter and then get sharper on the angle, so it makes more of a rounded tip, and then spin them on the table, and just trying to make everything nice in the hand and you know, sightly, so it looks good when the final product's delivered. So a lot of this prep work is good to do before you weld it together. It's quite a bit more difficult to round off edges and stuff when everything's all welded together in a frame. Just keep that in mind. So the more prep you can do before welding, you're often in a better case. The first step after these legs are ready to go, I need to cut the flat bars to the right size. So basically I'm taking 3 legs and lining them up on the table, and the way the client instructed me was to try and put it in as much of the divots, like the natural divots of the wood, as possible, so that it's more towards the center of the circle, if that makes sense. And really I'm just kind of putting all 3 to eye it up, and but I only need 1 accurate measurement for the way I'm going to build these out. So I'll measure between 2 posts and then cut that flat bar, and when I have the first piece, I'll weld the first 2 legs together and then come back to the table again and take the final measurements, just so that everything can be tight and snug. It's kind of like there's a lot of line up here by eye, so I just want to make sure that I don't mess this up and have to rework some parts. And then I'm also going to need one final measurement, and that's the thickness of the table. Just because the way, again, it was spec'd out by the customer, the leg needs to end about halfway up the disc of wood. So for these flat bars, nothing fancy. I'm just going to mark it and cut it with a cutoff disc. And so I'm just going to use a soapstone to mark it. And you'll see how I normally do this. I kind of tilt the angle of the cutoff disc just to make a score line, and then I'll straighten it up to a more of a 90, deepen up the score line, and then you get a pretty straight cut. Just take your time. You don't need to put crazy amounts of pressure, and make sure you're staying in that initial groove that you make, and you get nice clean cuts with the cutoff disc. So like I said, these first two legs I'm going to weld together and then dry fit it back on the piece of wood to get my last two measurements for the flat bars. Here I'm just taking my time, making sure the flat bar is at the correct depth from the edge of the rod, and then simultaneously trying to make sure everything's nice and square. The more you take your time getting stuff tacked up in the right measurements, making sure stuff is square, the less time you're gonna fight when you're trying to put everything together and make sure everything stays in line. So I got everything tacked in place, and then I'm just gonna fully weld these two legs. Like I said, it's an accurate measurement that I already have, so I'll fully weld them out, clean up these two pieces, or this now one piece, and then go back to the wood. You'll see here as I'm going through all these welds, I'm pretty, I don't know if this is a bad or a good thing, but I definitely often will re-maneuver the piece just so I can get in a comfortable welding position. You'll see almost all these welds I'm doing more or less in the same position. Just helps me keep the welds consistent, and obviously on bigger pieces, sometimes it's not worth the hassle, but I definitely take the time to do that more often than not. And then just a bit of grinder work with a flap disc to knock off the BBs and clean everything up a little bit so it looks good enough. And real quick guys, we're just over the halfway mark in this video, but I like to say make sure you have some class. Comment down below, hit that like button, ask me any questions you want. If you want to suggest the next video or some kind of projects you want to see or topics you want me to discuss. And then the last thing is if you're enjoying this type of content, these types of videos, make sure you subscribe. Alright, so this is one of the smaller pieces of wood, but here's what I was getting at. So basically I have these, the first two legs welded, and now I'm taking accurate measurements for the last two. And that just makes it easier to line everything up exactly. We're kind of building this as we go, and here I am on the big one, and now I'll show you the final assembly. So we're gonna get everything tacked into place, and then from here, once everything's all tacked up, I will do one final dry fit before I get in with a full weld on every seam. And so to get everything tacked up in shape, obviously I'm checking with a square often, and you see here I built up a spacer out of some old offcuts to put the flat bar at the exact height that it should be. The first one I lined it up with a measuring tape because I was welding them flat on the table, but now to make sure everything's at the right height, I just took the time to find the right pieces that will put it right at the right height. The small ones, I believe it was 1 1/4, and then you'll see when I'm on the bigger one, I just pick different pieces. It's always good to have extra pieces in your shop of different measurements. So whether you have flat bars in like if you have 1/4 inch flat bar, you know, you can stack 3/4 inch flat bars to make a 3/4 inch spacer and stuff. So you over time will collect different offcuts, and they're super useful later on in other projects. So that's what I'm doing here, just making sure everything's tacked into place, just moving that spacer around. It should be fitting just underneath, and you'll see right here I'm kind of pushing down on the flat bar to make sure it's touching that spacer, so that when I look at the final piece, everything should be setting at the same level. These wooden discs are just sitting flat on that flat bar, so I want to make sure everything's lined up as best as possible. And then we'll jump over to one of the bigger sets of legs. So you see it takes up a little bit more room, and I got a longer, a much higher spacer there. I like this style quite a bit more. Obviously the customer's wood is the customer's wood, but it's nice with the thick pieces. It definitely looks a bit more even, in my opinion, than the smaller, taller ones. Or more symmetrical, I guess. But anyways, we're progressing in this job. Like I kind of hinted at, there's not, like, this job isn't too hard, and really anybody can do this kind of job. There's just very basic measuring tape work. Very little, like, you know, I know I'm making unequal triangles, but I'm never measuring angles and making sure stuff is right. I'm literally building it as per the templates. So, you know, it's perfectly acceptable if you're working with customers and stuff. And I mean, most of them, or some of them, assume it, where they're going to leave the stuff with you. But some things you can't build, or unless the customer's going to give like hyper detailed drawings with measurements and angles, but that's going to be even harder. Just get them to drop off the templates, and then here you see, once I have everything tacked up, I'm just going to make sure that they fit. Kind of have to make sure they're only going to fit properly in one way, because I'm building it. So you see I have to dance around it every once in a while. And then when I finished up the full job, we made sure to mark what corner went where, especially on these bigger pieces of wood. When you're setting it in place, it's nice to already know what corner goes where, instead of struggling with these heavy pieces of wood. So we're looking pretty good here. I'll just show you one of the clips where I do all the full weld outs. Nothing to it, it's just like the initial welds from the first 2 legs. Just going over, trying to stay uniform with my welds. And then I'm doing inside and outside. Obviously these table legs are pretty thick and heavy, so it's 3/8 flat bar and 1 inch solid rod. So I'm going inside and out just to make sure everything's, you know, really properly welded, and there's some penetration and stuff. It's different when you're working with tubing and stuff. You can kind of get away sometimes with single pass on certain things, but I just wanted to be sure that these legs last several lifetimes, and this guy will end up being pretty happy with these. I think he's making a lot of these for different family members, and said that if the handout goes well, then he might come back for some more and see if he can start selling them off too. Like I said earlier, I'm maneuvering the piece and just trying to get it in the right position to do the welding, so it's the most comfortable. I did end up grinding out all these seams just so it looked nice. And another part I didn't show, I added some tabs on top of the frame so that he can actually screw the wood in. Originally I thought they were just being set in place, but I sent him some pics and he said make sure there's a way to screw them on. So there we are.
This job's wrapped up. Turned out pretty good. Took a little bit longer than I hoped. A couple working days involved in this, but my days got chopped up with running errands, taking some phone calls, scheduling my next work. So on to the next one. These ones turned out pretty great. Nice live edge table bases. We built them to suit each log, and because they're tripods, no wobble, everything's nice and flat. Pretty happy with this build. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe. Hit me up in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions for what's next. Have a good one.